Hello, everybody. Welcome to our 8 o'clock webinar today. I hope you've had a good day. My name is Anika. I am live from Milan. I'm one of the teachers in Myes Meravigli. So whenever you join us, please say hi, introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from, and how your weekend was. Okay. Okay, so also happy Easter to you guys. So I hope you've had a good Easter. So tell us also how your weekend has been. Right. So my name is Anika, and today we're going to talk about the past. Right, it's a little bit of grammar here today. Um, All right. So let me introduce myself to begin with. I am originally from Bangladesh, which is a small country near India. And I used to live in Malaysia for a while before I moved to Italy. And I've been living in Italy for about 6 years, right? Well, today is actually a special day for me as well because it's the Bengali New Year. So in Bangladesh, it's called Noboborsho, or it's like the first day of the Bengali year. And instead of 2020, we're in the 1427 today. So Happy New Year to you guys. Um, so let's talk about the past today. This is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about yourself. And then we are going to use the past simple and past continuous. So we're going to do a bit of grammar there. And we're going to talk about experiences in the past. So let's begin with our first topic here. Where were you born and raised? So to be born is born is always with the verb to be born. So if you talk about it in the first person, I was born, right? And to be raised is also used for when you are growing up somewhere. Okay, so to grow up is very similar to being raised, and I often find students confusing the two. To grow up is when you are getting older, from being a little kid to becoming older, you're growing up. And when you're raised by another person, right? So your parents raised you, right? So where were you born and raised? So I can see a viewer here joining us already. So feel free to share with us where you were born and raised. So as for me, I was born and raised in Dhaka, which is the capital city of Bangladesh. And right, so also keep in mind that when you answer your questions, there is a time lag. So I might be getting your response a little bit later. Okay. Well, then the second question says, where and what did you study? And there could be different possibilities. It could be about primary or secondary school, college or university, master's or professional degree. So this is answered simply as I studied in etc. So, for example, for my primary and secondary school, I studied in a private school, for example. I studied in Malaysia for university. Okay. And I haven't done a master's degree. I started a master's degree, to be honest, but I dropped out of the course. So to drop out is also a very common phrasal verb, which means when you stop the course, or you stop your education without finishing it. So I dropped out of a master's degree. I'm going to write it down for you guys. So if you're watching afterwards, you can take note. I dropped out of master's degree, of a master's degree, which means I didn't finish it. Okay. So so different countries have different names for different degrees. So master's degree is what you study in university after a bachelor's degree. So bachelor's degree are the first years when you have the foundation of the subject. Let me write that down for you guys. Bachelor's degree. And then you have the master's degree. Usually in Italy, I know bachelor's degree lasts 3 years, but in many other countries, it lasts 4 years, right? So in Malaysia, I had to go to a 4 years bachelor's degree. All right. And so after the bachelor's degree, there comes like a specialized degree, which is the master's degree. And then if you want to study even further, a lot of people do their PhD. So PhD. It's like a doctorate degree. So it's like the highest level of education. So let's move on and use some of these really common sentences to talk about yourself. So if you're talking about yourself, it's like a short autobiography. So autobiography is usually in the form of a book or of a movie where it's like a summary of somebody's life. So if you want to know about a person, you usually talk about where they grew up, where they lived, where they studied, what they did. So let's look at these sentences and we are going to match them with the correct combination. Okay. So I am going to read out the first column for pronunciation. So if you're watching, please feel free to match them, write the correct sentences, okay? So I'm just going to read the list for you guys for pronunciation. So on my left, I have I was born, I grew up just, I went to, I studied both, I worked at, I went back to. And on my right side, I have in the country, an art school, outside of Vienna, school to get a master's in art history, a gallery for a while, history and visual arts. Okay, so what do you think? All right, so the first one we have already talked about. So I was born, and you want to mention the place, right? Yeah, so you're expecting to talk about a place. I was born. The answer is born in the country, right? Or in the countryside. So countryside is a word used for talking about somewhere outside or far from the city where it's green and natural. Some people live in the countryside in a farm, for example. So, for example, I was born in the city, and I have always lived in the city. But countryside is a place that I would like to move to, or at least experience living in a countryside. So I don't know about you guys, but I have this fascination about living in the countryside someday. Okay, so let's talk about the second sentence. I grew up just. So I grew up just outside of Vienna. Okay, So just is a word used for not far, but immediately after or immediately outside Vienna. So another word for just outside the city is can be outskirts, in the outskirts of a city. outskirt. In the outskirts of Milan, for example. So that is a very common expression. Okay. So the third sentence, I went to an art school. Now, for studying something specific, you often use the verb go. Okay, so I went to an art school. So school doesn't always mean just school for children, but sometimes the word school is used for university as well, or in general. So, for example, I went to engineering school. Okay, so you can talk about I went to business school, I went to history school. Art school would be the field of study. So, all right. Also, another difference could be for between university and college, depending on the country. For example, in the UK, the word university is used for the place where you go for higher degrees. But in America, they often say college instead of university. Okay, but it means the same thing. And then, all right, so let's look at the next example. We have I studied both. Okay, so you're looking for two things here. Both means both of two things. So I studied both history and visual arts. Okay. So if you guys, anybody watching has studied two things or whatever you have studied, please feel free to share. So me, for example, I have studied engineering, biochemical engineering. At the time, it seemed really interesting. And worked at. So I worked at, this one is really easy. I worked at a gallery for a while. Okay, so a gallery could be it could be related to art or something. So to work at is the preposition used to talk about a specific place where you work. So for example, I work at a school. Okay. And then the last one, of course, I went back to I went back to school to get a master's in art or in art history. Okay, so again, go to school, the verb go is used for going to university, going to school, or anything related to education. So what about you? Please feel free to share about your own autobiography. So whatever it is, where you studied, where you were born, share about where you grew up, if you liked growing up there, and what you have studied, where you work, and so on. Okay. So as for me, if I have to use these sentences, I would say I was born in a city, a very busy city called Dhaka, which is the capital of Bangladesh. And I grew up inside the city. Yeah, like in the middle of the city. That's why it was kind of like a chaotic kind of environment. But it has helped me later on. I found it useful because I got used to the busy life. And I went to engineering school. And if I have to use another sentence here, I could say I worked at an event organization, event organizer once. Okay, so feel free to share about yourself. Tell us. Okay, share something about yourself using. Okay. All right, so just as a reminder, whenever you write, when you type up your comments, we usually receive it a little bit later. There's a little bit of delay, but keep the comments coming. And if I get it, I'm going to read it out. And if there are mistakes, don't worry, I'm going to help you out with correcting them. Okay. So these are the prompts you can use to talk about yourself. I was born, I grew up in, I went to, I studied, whatever you've studied, I worked in, then I went to, and so on. Okay, then is a nice word to use when you talk about a sequence. Like first, I went to high school, then I went to university, and then I started working. Okay. Now, let's talk about experiences. What tense is used to talk about a finished action in the past? So what do you think? Whoever's watching, what tense is used to talk about a finished action in the past? So something that's finished in the past and happened only once. Okay. Oh, hi, Raisa. Nice to see you here. I'm from Bologna. I was born in Moldova. Great. I grew up in a small town. Oh, that's nice. Did you like living in the small town, or would you like to have lived in a different place? I mean, I lived in the city, but I have always thought that it would have been nice living in a smaller town or maybe the countryside. So let me know. Okay. And I have been in Bologna once in a summer, I remember, and it was lovely. It was very hot, I remember. It was very warm, but it was a lovely place. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Also, now we're talking about the tense. The tense that is finished in the past, an action that's finished in the past and happened only once. We use the past simple tense. Okay. So, for example, I went to the supermarket 5 days ago, I think. When did I go? Maybe on last Thursday. I went to the supermarket on Thursday. So it happened once and was done, finished action. Okay. So, okay. But the second question, we use a different tense. The question is, what tense is used to talk about something in progress in the past? So, something that was continuing. It started in the past and still continuing around a specific time. So we use the past continuous or past progressive tense. All right. For example, at this time yesterday, so yesterday was Sunday, at this time around 8:20, I was having dinner. Okay. So, Raisa, what about you? Can you tell me about one thing that you did yesterday? And tell me, what were you doing yesterday at this time? Okay. So the example for myself is that yesterday I finished reading a book. Okay. So the past of finished. And at this time yesterday, I was having dinner. Okay. Now, here there are more examples to observe. I grew up in the countryside just outside of Seattle. My parents bought a farmhouse there before I was born. They were trying to live a simple rural life. Okay, oh, that sounds lovely. A countryside, life in the countryside. So those of you who are joining us, Tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? Okay. Did you grow up in a city or did you grow up in a small town like Raisa? Okay, moving on. So we're going to compare the tenses past simple and past continuous. The past simple is used to talk about experiences which often have a specific time in the past. Yeah, very important, specific time. So, for example, I said yesterday I finished reading a book. So, yesterday was the time I mentioned. Oh, great. Raisa says, when I was a child, I was very happy and lived in the town. But at the moment, I love city. I love living in the city. All right. It's funny how what we want in life sometimes changes. Like, for example, I was happy living in the city always, and now I'm changing. Like, I think maybe it's better living in the countryside, the quiet, nice life. So I think it's quite the opposite for you. So as a child, you love the small town, and now you love the city, right? So it's funny how things change with time. Okay. Now, here's an example. We went to the Caribbean last year. So last year is a specified time in the past. But if it was a continuous action, we use past continuous. For example, what were you doing last night? We were dancing at a beach last night. We also use the past continuous with past simple to talk about interrupting action. For example, we were swimming in the ocean when we saw a sea turtle. Okay, so we were swimming was an action that was continuing, and we saw the turtle was an interruption. Okay, so you guys also think of an example. Okay, think of something that was happening to you in the past and then something interrupted. For me, an example would be if I have to think of a true example, I was going to the supermarket when I noticed many flowers in people's balcony. Like if you guys have noticed, like the balconies and windows are really nice with people putting up a lot of flowers. Okay. All right. So we have some comments from Raisa again. On Thursday, I went to the bank. Oh, really? I mean, I don't think it's true though, right? It could be, well, it could be invented. It's fine. And today I'm running. Wait a minute there. So if you say today I am running, that means at the moment you're running, but I don't believe you're running. You are now watching a webinar. So you are not running. If you use the present continuous, you mean that it's happening at the moment. Okay. But if you talk about the past, maybe in the morning, if you went running, you would say in the morning I went running. Okay. So if it's in the past, the infinitive is to go running. Infinitive. Okay. And then if you want to talk about the past, I went running. And if you talk about the past continuous, I was running or jogging. On the other hand, if you say I am running, that means you are running at the moment. So what about, can you correct yourself, Raisa? What did you mean? Were you running in the morning or did you go running yesterday or things like that? So, anybody else who's joining in, please give us an example of a sentence with both past continuous and past simple. So, as I said, I was going to the supermarket when I noticed many flowers in balconies and windows, right? So one other thing I want to mention is the verb to go running. Okay, so I noticed that I didn't just say the verb running, I said go running. Go and the gerund of the verb is very often used when you talk about an activity you do for pleasure. So I'm going to write that down. Go plus verb with ing is used for activities that you do when you are outside and you do them for free time. Okay, so free time activities or leisure activities that you enjoy doing outside. So there can be other examples like go swimming, go shopping. Very often they're movement activities. Like you don't do it in the house, right? You go shopping. So for example, you can cooking, for example, is a movement or free time activity. It can be free time activity as well, but you don't do it outside the house, right? So you don't say go cooking, just cooking. So other example, go swimming, go shopping, go hiking up the mountain, for example. Okay. Now, at this point, if you have any question, Raisa, you can always ask. I think you have me all to yourself right now. People are probably having dinner. So, okay. In the meantime, we're going to talk about interruptions. So we were putting past simple and past continuous in the same sentence, right? We're talking about interruptions. But when you talk about interruptions, you often use the words when and while. So try this exercise. When do we use when? When do we use while? So if you know the answers, you can put the number and write the answer. 1B, 1A, things like that. So number one, we use to introduce the past simple. We use to introduce the past continuous. What do you think, Raisa? Oh, so Raisa here says, I am going to buy clothes and I am buying 3 dress and 4 hats. Okay. All right. So you have used the present continuous here, but you have to use the past continuous. So instead of I am, I was. Okay. So I was plus verb with ing. Okay. So you would say I was going to buy clothes. I was buying. So spelling B-U-Y-I-N-G. Buying free. I think you mean 3, right? Free. If the dress is free, you don't buy it. So 3 dresses. Oh, lovely. So I think you really like shopping. Me too. I love shopping. Okay. So I think could be a little confusion with the structure of past simple and past continuous. So I'm going to go back a little bit and explain the structures. Okay. So for past simple, you simply put the subject and next to it you put the verb in the past simple tense, right? So subject, let me write that down, past simple. You put the subject with the verb in the past. An example would be, I went to the supermarket last Thursday. Okay, so the past of go is went. I went to the supermarket last Thursday. Last Thursday is the specific time, so we use past simple. Past continuous is different. Past continuous, as we discussed, is used when an action is continued for a while in the past. It wasn't just one moment action. So for example, I started the lesson at 8 o'clock. Okay, so started was like one point in time. Past continuous continues. So for example, I was walking in the park when I saw a bird. Okay, so the structure is with first the subject, and then you have the verb to be in the past, which are was or were. Okay, and then you use the gerund of the verb. Okay, so I'm going to write this down. If you have any questions about this, please let us know. So for past continuous, you have subject with verb to be was or were, and then verb with ing. Okay, so I'll write down an example. I was walking in the park when I saw a bird. Okay. So you were continuing to walk in the park, and then there was an interruption. You saw the bird in one moment. Okay. So Raisa says, I went to work last month when starting coronavirus. All right. So I went to work last month is correct. Okay. So I think you meant before coronavirus started. Again, you use the past simple twice here. Okay. So don't worry, I'm going to write it down correctly. The first part is excellent. I went to work last month before. So coronavirus start is an action, a finished action in time, in the past, right? So again, you're going to use the past simple. So I want to work on before coronavirus. I would say the coronavirus situation, or better yet, the lockdown, the coronavirus lockdown. Virus lockdown started. Okay. So have a look at this sentence, Raisa. So it's better to say, I went to work last month before the coronavirus lockdown started. Okay. All right. So it was, or if you talk about the interruption that you had, you can also say, I was going to work last month. It's even better to say that because you were continuing before something interrupted. I was going to work last month when the coronavirus lockdown. Now, lockdown is the situation where you are supposed to be at home. when we are all in the house, this whole situation, you will hear this, you will see this often in the newspaper these days. Okay, so this is a perfect example for the situation right now. So like Raisa says, she was going to work, she was continuing, and then something interrupted that action, which is when the coronavirus lockdown started. Okay, so if anybody else has joined us, give your own example of past continuous and a past simple, an action that was happening continuously and something that interrupted that action. In the meantime, we are going to move on to this exercise. So we use when to introduce the past simple, and we use while to introduce the past continuous. Let's look at some examples, right? So remember, when, so the last example we talked about was the perfect one to observe. I was going to work last month when, and then you have a past simple, started. Okay, we can change it around as well. We can say, the coronavirus lockdown started while I was going to work. Okay, now let's try this example. Raisa or anyone else watching, if you know the answers, please write them down, write the number, and write when or while. Oh no, I'm sorry, not when or while. Write the correct form of the verb. Okay, so you have to fill in the blanks with either the past simple or past continuous. So use the verb in the brackets and write the correct form of the verb. So number one is I when the pizza man. Okay, so you have to use sleep and arrive. So if it is difficult for you to know which is past simple, past continuous, something that can help you understand, help you decide is to know which action is longer and which action is really short. Okay, so actions that are longer are usually in the past continuous. Actions that are really short are momentary actions. They're in the past simple. Okay, long actions, I'm going to write them down, are usually in the past continuous. For example, I was walking. So you don't just walk for 1 second. You walk for some time, right? So long action. Short actions, on the other hand, are usually in the past simple. For example, I started the lesson. You don't continue to start something. You start it or you finish it. Or I fell. You don't continue to fall. I fell. Has to fall. Okay. So I will help you out with the first one. So sleep is a long action. You don't sleep for just 1 second. You continue to sleep. Arrive is a short action, just momentary, just arrive, right? So the answer would be I was sleeping when. So notice we use when we introduce the past simple, when the pizza man arrived. Okay. So if you have any questions at this point, please don't hesitate to write them up. I was sleeping when the pizza man arrived. Let's observe the second sentence. So Raisa, if you know the answer, please type it up. Don't worry about making mistakes. Okay, so the second one, she, a celebrity while she, to work last week. This is a nice example. Again, think about whether it's a long action or a short action. So imagine this person doing this, and then a celebrity. I don't know. This it could be a really famous person. Okay. So what do you think? Again, here, what is the long action here? See or drive? So the long action here is driving. Okay, and the short action is see. Okay, so she, and so you use the past simple of see. Past simple of see is saw. Okay, so she saw a celebrity while she, the past continuous of drive is was driving. Was driving to work last week. Okay. So here we observe while just before the past continuous. Okay. Now, number 3, the people play soccer in the park when it start to rain. Again, think about this one. Okay, give it a try, guys, whoever is watching. Try number 3. Okay, so think about which is the long action, which is the short action. Play or start. So people, okay, I'm going to give you some time there to try it out. And then also try number 4, he, while he, the film. So the verb text and watch. So to text is a verb that means when you're writing to someone on your phone. So you're texting. And, okay, watch the film. Okay, oh, Raisa says we're playing and started. Oh, I think you're absolutely right. Well done. The people were playing when it started. Very good. Now, I have a little note on pronunciation. The verb here, the verb to be here is were. So I hear a lot of students say where, which is not correct. Where means, where is a question word, W-H-E-R-E. When you want to say, where are you? Where is he? But this is pronounced were, okay? People were playing. And what about number 4, Raisa? What do you think? Sometimes you don't have, you can even have both continuous or both past simple. Okay, so number 4, you may want to think about it a little bit. Because sometimes you do, sometimes it's not an interruption, but you continue 2 things at the same time, right? Like I can say that I was, if you're multitasking, for example, you can do 2 things. I was cooking while I was speaking on the phone, which is not a good idea for me because sometimes I make mistakes while cooking. But yeah, some people can be cooking and talking at the same time. So which is what's happening in number 4. Okay, so for time limit, we're going to continue. So Raisa, if you want to type it up, also fine. Okay, so watching and is all right. So actually, they're both in continuous, right? So you're saying not texted, but texting. He was texting while he was watching the film. In this case, we use 2 past continuous, because both the actions are continuing at the same time. Okay. He was texting, so it's like maybe he wasn't concentrating. So he was texting and watching like that. Parallel actions. Okay. So is there something that you do at the same time, Raisa, or someone else watching? Like if you, I don't know, do you cook and speak on the phone at the same time? Or try to think of other examples. Okay. All right. So any questions, please don't hesitate. Next, we're going to talk about stative verbs. So these are some special verbs we're going to talk about. So what are stative verbs? Stative verbs are verbs that describe how something feels or seems. Okay? They are not actions. They are not used in the continuous forms. So these are special because even if it's a continuous verb, it's not really an action. It's like a state of feeling or when it seems like something. So even if it can be a continuous concept, you can never use the continuous tense with these verbs. Okay, so for the some really common examples are written below. There are many, many other stative verbs, but it's a very short list. So have, appear, seem, love, like, hate, believe, understand. Okay. So for example, I like this book. Okay. So even though maybe I'm reading it at the moment and I'm enjoying it, you cannot say I'm liking it. You just say I like it. Why you can't say liking it? Because it's a stative verb. It's just a verb that describes feeling or when something seems like something. Okay, so I like it. Or you can say I am enjoying it, but I like it. Or for example, the verb have. Okay, so for example, I have a bookshelf in my room. Okay, so you don't say I am having. It sounds just very strange. For stative verbs, you just don't say it. Maybe there are really very, very few exceptions, like in advertising, in McDonald's, you will hear, I'm loving it. It's not something that people normally say, but maybe for advertising purposes, sometimes you can break the rules. Okay, so moving on. So we have some sentences here which are not correct. There are mistakes here. So find the mistakes in the sentences on the right. So Raisa or whoever else is watching, please correct the sentence. Number one, I was hating the new Spider-Man movie. What's wrong here? I'll give you a hint. So you guys please write the number and then the correction. You don't have to write the whole sentence, just the correct part. So number one, I'll help you with a little hint. Hate is a stative verb, so it's not correct. Okay, Raisa has a comment. When people drive while talking on the phone. Okay, yeah, that's true. Okay, so the correct sentence sometimes, um, or if you want to think of one person, yeah, so you can say he was driving while talking on the phone. Okay, so let me write down another sentence more clearly. He was, just because we're practicing past continuous, I'm going to write in the past continuous. He was driving while talking on the phone. Very good example, and which is not good to do. Unfortunately, a lot of people do that. Okay. All right, so number one here, Shelly, can you correct this one, Raisa? So I hate is a stative verb, so it's not correct. So what is the correct version? So the correct version is I hated the new Spider-Man movie. Okay, not I was hating. I hated, past simple. Number two, she seemed happy after work yesterday. Do you think it is correct? Or so not all sentences are wrong. Some are correct, some are not correct. What do you think? Is number two correct? She seemed happy after. Very good, Raisa. Hated. Number two, what do you think? She seemed happy after work yesterday. Is it correct? You have a specified time, yesterday, and you have the tense past simple. So I think it is correct, right? So absolutely correct. And number three, we saw our friends at the supermarket today. Very good, Raisa. Now for number two. Number three, we saw our friends at the supermarket today. So today is a specified time, and then it's happened in the past, one time. What do you think? Okay, so while I'm waiting for Raisa, I'm going to read out number four. I was having a headache. So be careful of the verb have. We know that have is a stative verb. And then number five, my son was believing in Santa Claus. So believe again is a stative verb. So Raisa, you think number 3 is true. We saw our friend. Yes, I also think it's true. And it is. Great job. Okay, so we are running out of time, so we're going to do them very quickly. So number 4, having a headache is not correct. Instead, since it's a stative verb, I had a headache. Okay, so when you have the past of have, it's had. I had a headache yesterday. And then my son was believing. Believe again is a stative verb, so you cannot use the past continuous. You use simple. My son believed in Santa Claus last year. Last one, they wanted to go to Ireland on vacation, which is absolutely correct. All right, so we are out of time, unfortunately. So I hope this has been useful, and I hope you have a great evening. So keep watching our webinars, and hopefully we'll be able to see you around. All right, so have a great evening. Bye. Bye, Rysel, and thank you for your participation. It was lovely having you here.